I'm Taylor. I do a lot of spoken word poetry. Um, I am really interested in how poetry can be used and the different things poetry can do for people. So when I was picking the poems for tonight, I was trying to pick poems that I've written that have done different things for me um, over the years. So my first poem is I wrote after going running one day in the marshlands near where I live, and it's called Wild Irises. I know where the wild irises grow, where you can find feathery purples reaching through the reeds towards a blue sea sky. I know where the wild irises grow. You'll need galoshes to get there, though, because the wild irises grow in the muddiest of muck, the kind that will suck off your boot and leave you shoeless for the walk home. Yes, I know where the wild irises grow, and it isn't pretty. Outside the city, in the suburbs, is a wild where a perfectly pruned tree is something between a dream and a nightmare. A place through thick vines and hard times, full of shadowy darkness that'll trick the mind, full of foreign sounds that surround from all sides, all closed in by a twisted treetop canopy that'll turn day into some close cousin of night. Yes, I know where the wild irises grow, and most will never get a chance to see them. They'll be too afraid to brave the thickness of the swamp, but those who want to know true beauty, to hold hope by the stem between their thumb and index finger, will linger in the thigh-high water as their leg is brushed by something just out of sight. It will not frighten them. They will step on, strong in knowing there is an end, even if it can't be seen, that the dirt and the grime will wash off, that the thickest of vines can be cut at the stalk. They move slow and only strangle those frozen in fear. And when the irises finally appear, like petaled angels lifting trumpets of gold, they will be all the more beautiful for the filth they call home. Nothing worthwhile is easy. And your garden irises may be pleasing enough, but the lightest of gusts threatens to topple their heavy heads. Those garden irises are not tough. They have been bred with a careful hand on well-manicured land. They have never known struggle in their life. No, nothing worthwhile is easy. And long after the stems of your garden irises bend and snap, those wild irises will be standing tall like soldiers armed with a painful past that has helped them last as long as they have. Yes, I know where the wild irises grow. They've taken root in my bones, feeding off the flow of my blood. They bloom out my nose, my fingertips, my toes, like a flood of refugees fleeing a war-torn country their hearts can never truly escape. Yes, I am where the wild irises grow. And so long as they live within me, I will always have the strength to step on. So, my next poem is actually it's a love poem. Um, I've been in a relationship for let's see, since like high school. So I guess like 8 years now, and we've been on again, off again, and but we've made it through a lot together. And you know, when you find the love of your life, you just know. So this one's called Muy Caliente. Your juices stick thick to my chin. My grin will not be wiped away by any number of napkins. Burrito, you are delicious. Nutritious, I'm downright superstitious when it comes to your composition. A welcomed imposition, my heart burns for you. But you're well worth that pain. The stain you leave on my clothes, I wear like a badge to let the world know I am not ashamed to be with you. Eyes turn from the sin of my lips against your tortilla skin. The greatest place I've ever been is inside of you. Baby, they lied to you when they said you were just a way to make it through the day. You're the reason I pray again. Say again in that jalapenoed whisper how hot you are for me. Others talk about this thing we have like it's some kind of problem. But all I taste are solutions in the communion of your contents, each ingredient playing its part to make every bite of you a work of art. I know this is the start of something I've never had before. You always leave me wanting more, but too full for seconds. I'll be back for that fire found in the folds of your fine-figured dough, because there is no other supper, no other lover that satisfies my hunger like you. We're actually off right now because I'm on a diet. Um, but come summer. Um, so this next poem, I use poetry sometimes to explore my own family history, because I don't know much about my family history beyond my mother, my uncle, and my aunt. On that side, I don't really know much. They came over from Portugal, so I don't have a lot of connection with my family beyond, my heritage. So my uncle went to Portugal, and he spent 6 months there and tried to find out more about our family. And he came back, and he told us stories about how my grandfather had been a sorcerer. So I wrote this poem. It's called Warlock. I've known seahorses and sea shanties that granted me the power of grace through ancient rituals mystical only to those unpracticed in the sacred hymnals of that forgotten race. There are traces of Atlantean sorcerers racing through my veins. The mystery of my history sank with that mythical place. See, according to my uncle, my grandfather was a warlock. And with just the language of his time, he could rhyme the eye out Osiris, close all irises like night, and frighten even the most learned astronomer out of his stars. He traveled far, sustained on only the grain of a single oxen. The water of a moccasin quenched his thirst. He spat blessing and curse like reverse sunsets, made bets with constellations, and often won. He told my uncle he was the son of a solar system, that he could twist them into strings of pearls, and in the palm of his hand each strand would unfurl into 7 singing angels. That's how he and my grandmother met. She bet him her feathers. He couldn't tether the wind to the indigo sky, so he caught and fried one of Cupid's doves, coating all of his words in a layer of love, and with just 3 sentences, he filled the gust with such a big blue lust, she thrust herself from the tips of the trees to the clouds, and the breeze was never happier. My grandmother molted and folded like arms around shoulders and neck, like lips around I do, like dancing feet into step. But she'd never forget how they met. That's why my uncle said she never let him speak to other women. That's why my uncle said she locked the only phone in the spare bedroom. That's why my uncle said she always made him pray out loud. She wanted to be able to tell if he was asking for forgiveness or casting a spell. My uncle believes my grandfather was a warlock, that he could wear time like an old coat, that he could walk on waves and float like smoke, that he could bathe in the lava of a volcano, that he could change the way a river flows, that he could converse with birds and multiply herds, that he could sing the rain, knew all the words. Yeah, according to my uncle, my grandfather was a warlock. He could have told the grass to grow more slowly or commanded the deer to clear the green, but he didn't. Instead, he reached his fingers into a tangled lawnmower blade and transformed his hand into a bloodied stump, stood up, spoke in the broken language of a stroke, and then disappeared beneath 6 feet of dirt. According to my uncle, we are the lineage of a warlock, and there's not a spell left on this earth to make him understand my grandfather wasn't magic. He was just a man with stories of glory he wished could be true. And we, my uncle, we are just men too. So, this last poem that I'm going to do is a little bit. It's I wrote it for my best friend Tyler, who's a nurse at Children's Hospital. So sometimes with poetry, you try to understand things that you can never experience, and so that's kind of what this was about. I call him Fixer, though he doesn't know it. Every time the pressure of living begins to crack me, he patches me back up with love and words strung from heartbeats. It's easy for him to grin at me and say I'm going to be okay because I'm not the only one that calls him Fixer. It's a name spoken from tiny voice boxes, often softly, because strength is hard to come by sometimes. See, he battles demons in bloodstreams, keeping children's dreams breathing, even if it means feeding them breath from his own lungs. He is the only one standing between wet eyes and white lights, keeping watch on dark nights, making sure death dances no dalliances with the little bits of life barely bobbing their heads to sleep as it is. He gives them prayers packed in capsules, injects hope from hollow-holed syringes with titanium tips, picks their wishes up off the floor, and makes sure they are always squeezing back. But they do not always squeeze back. And in that moment when their eyes fade to black, there is no fixing left to be done. The hungry hands of a haloed heaven has called them home, and he can only hold mothers and fathers in his arms as they cry all the tears their child never will. He lets them fill his cotton scrubs and wears them like an albatross, a cross so heavy it could cleave the world in two if only we knew what it was from. But he doesn't let on. His job is not done because every room is filled with children waiting to be fixed. When his shift comes to a close, he goes home, headphones in ears to block out the fears that creep up from behind subway seats when he least expects them. It isn't until he passes through his threshold that he allows himself to fold into 1,000 paper butterflies, all with stunted wings. He sinks into bed, not sure he will find the strength to rise ever again. Who fixes the fixer when the pieces come apart? Who knows how to sew back together a broken heart? I am no artist with a needle and thread, and I cannot pretend I know what that life must be like. And honestly, it's hard for me to step outside the lines that so neatly define my philosophy, but I do. I explain how the Big Bang started from energy unaccounted for, how life exploded from an unknown source, and even I have trouble not believing there is a higher force when I finish speaking. But the leaking doesn't always stop there. So I give him my arms. I give him my chest. I give him my best impression of a nurse working in a children's ICU. But the only true remedy is time. Time to let himself heal, to let himself feel, to let himself deal with a loss that cannot be found. And in the end, he always comes around. pulls his blues back on, ties his shoes with double knots, and walks back in armed with a capsule and syringe. Because the lives that get to be lived thanks to his lungs and his love makes all the difference in the world to parents he will never have to hug, who do not have to plug a 6-foot deep child-wide hole in the ground with the sound of their happiness. I call him Fixer because he fixes bodies, repairs homes, fills in holes, keeps dreams afloat, and even though he doesn't always know it, he's called Fixer by all the tiny voice boxes that hold their parents' hands and squeeze back. So, thank you very much, guys.